Paulo Freire's banking method of education is not as effective for student learning as the problem-posing concept of education. Creator of banking and problem posing, Paulo Freire is the creator of these concepts. He is also a Brazilian philosopher, educator, and author of the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, published in 1968. He discusses banking method and problem-posing methods within the Pedagogy of the Oppressed. What is the banking model of education? The banking concept, or narration sickness, is defined by Paulo Freire as education thus becomes an act of depositing in which students are depositories and the teacher is a depositor. Instead of communicating, the teacher issues communiques and makes deposits which the student patiently receive, memorize, and repeat. This is the banking concept of education. The banking model of education consists of one-way learning where the teacher administers knowledge, student receives knowledge. Teacher is expert in his or her field while student is a novice and knows nothing. And at the very end of the banking model, it just humanizes the student. Now, problem posing, that brings us to problem posing. What is problem posing? Problem posing is defined by Paulo Freire as problem posing education responding to the essence of consciousness, intentionality, rejects communiques and embodies communication. It epitomizes the special characteristic of consciousness. Consciousness as consciousness of consciousness. Paulo Freire. So a problem-posing model of education consists of students utilizing acts of cognition. Problem-posing resolves teacher-student contradiction. Lastly, problem-posing poses real-life problems for students that really trying to understand their subjects in school. The theoretical banking and problem posing in Kenya. Dr. Wycliffe Omokoa of Machakos, Kenya, and lecturer at Machakos University. So Dr. Wycliffe Omokoa writes in the Journal of Education and Social Research about the aspects of higher education in Kenya, Africa. He discusses the establishments of universities, their challenges. He also discusses narration sickness and the educational objectives. Now, within the educational objectives, there is an act, the Universities Act 2012, and this act helps with development and advancement of education, promotes learning, and encourages critical thinking. Lastly, it also promotes opportunity equality. So problem posing enhances this act. So Act 2012, so problem posing humanizes the student, so problem posing also incites interaction between student and teacher. Problem posing spreads authentic thinking and facilitates critical learning, or actually thinking. Problem posing civilizes. Narration sickness leads to an act of oppression in teaching learning process. According to Freire, an act is oppressive when it prevents people from being more fully human. This way, narration sickness, as seen from the banking concept of education, prevents learners from being more fully human. This is a statement from Dr. Wycliffe Omokoa. So this brings us to the advantages and disadvantages of problem posing and banking. So in the article Problem Posing Education, 6 Key Characteristics by Dr. Chris Drew, he explains in this article the various benefits and limitations of problem posing. He discusses the advantages in problem posing. So he discusses the advantages in problem posing in which students can use prior knowledge and cognitive processes, and teacher and students can become co-investigators, which will lead to dual learning. The disadvantage of problem posing is that the teacher loses control because the teacher and the student are now at equal same levels of authority. And this also with problem posing is more inexact instruction, which causes certain problems or more basic structures, or say like arithmetic would need more exact structure. Problem posing would probably have more problem conveying that to a student. Furthermore, problem posing also forces cognitive thinking on students. Now, the banking model, Education, Pros and Cons by Dr. Chris Drew, he discusses the advantages and disadvantages of the banking method. He talks about the advantages of the banking method, that the teacher has control. It reduces misbehavior, and some students prefer transmission of knowledge. And lastly, some students actually, banking model also transfers values and cultures of previous generations. Now this brings us to the transfers of value in culture. So I've obtained 2 interviews that explain this. So Anne Adrian, she discusses the value of perception, which has been transmitted from the banking concept. The benefit of college, as he states, the benefit of college is the ability to get a decent job. Sarah Middleton discusses the cultural perception, a college degree. I know corporations that won't even consider you unless you have a degree. Banking model issues. So banking model issues denies critical thinking, denies creativity, causes dualism, neglects prior knowledge, and dehumanizes students. Problem posing is more effective for students' overall learning. It promotes creativity and critical thinking. It demolishes teacher over student paradigms. Student and teacher learn together. And lastly, concepts pertain to reality. Problem posing supports individual learning. Therefore, Paulo Freire's banking method of education is not as effective for student learning as a problem posing concept of education. Thank you for listening.